Well, it's that time of year again with the 2024 season officially in the books and the playoffs all but in the books with the exception of the Super Bowl. It's about time to go ahead and take a look back and see how each and every team did compared to expectations laid out at the beginning of the season. And to make this more fun, we're going to do this in the internet's favorite form, a tier list. Alright, so here we are. Our 5 categories today are vastly exceeded expectations, which are teams that had expectations performed way up here above them. Then we have our exceeded expectations. Expectation here, you were about here. As advertised, here's your expectations, you're here. Failed expectations, you just barely failed it. Collapsed, you were down on the floor. Let's go ahead and kick things off here with the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals having an alright season for the most part. You know, it was up and down, very much up and down. I kind of expected them to be around this way. I kind of expected them to, have their moments, have their times where they fall apart. They really just didn't really wow me, but they didn't really collapse compared to what I had expected them to do this season. Alright, up next we got the Atlanta Falcons sitting at 8-9, but not the way that we expected them to get there. I anticipated it to be a Kirk Cousins season. He clearly wasn't the answer. They made the swap to Michael Penix, and he looked incredible. I kind of expected them to be around a 500 team under Kirk Cousins. So I'm tempted to put him in as advertised, but I might throw him in exceeded expectations. No, we gotta throw him in as advertised. This team, I really feel like they were built to be a 500 team, but they do have promise next season, and expectations will be raised next year to meet those new lofty goals. Baltimore, you had your postseason collapse. There you go. That's what you were advertised to be. You're advertised to be a team that does really well in the regular season, then come playoffs, you turn into a pumpkin. There you go. Buffalo, same exact thing. You made the playoffs, you turn into a pumpkin. There you go. Whoop-de-doo. Now we're getting into the more interesting teams. Carolina, a 5-12 team, likely not going to be on the top half of the chart, right? Absolutely not. This team really showed growth. They were better. I had them around 3 to 4 wins. They were better than that. And Bryce Young showed massive development this season to where next year I think this team can be floating around 500. I don't know if they're going to be making the playoffs, but they'll be floating around 500 next year, so watch out for Carolina. Chicago, on the other hand, a 5-12 team. I expected a little bit more out of you guys. Yeah, Matt Eberflus wasn't a good coach, but I anticipated you guys to be a bit closer to 500 than you actually were. You ended up 5-12. I was expecting around that 7 to 8 win range. So you didn't really miss the mark by much, but you did miss the mark by a little bit. Cincinnati, let's be real here. It was playoffs or bust for you guys. You didn't make the playoffs, so you gone bust. Also, looking at your record through the season, I mean, you were only 1 game out of the playoffs, but we expected you to be a 10, 11, 12 win team, not a 9 and 8 team that might have been able to barely sneak into the playoffs. Cincinnati's really been having this problem for the last couple of years, and I'm almost tempted to lower my expectations a decent bit for them because they have shown since that one magical Super Bowl run, they are not the team we thought they were. They haven't been able to really prove anything. They've just been there. Cleveland, I expected more from you. I expected you guys to be able to at least make some sort of a decent push. You know, I was expecting maybe 6 wins, 7 wins. You couldn't even you barely mustered 3. I mean, yeah, Deshaun Watson got hurt, which is kind of comedic in a way, but ultimately I was hoping that you guys would have done a little bit more, being a little bit more of a threat in the AFC North. Instead, you were just the pushovers. Now, the same thing for you. We, once again, had expectations laid out that were up here, and you were saying, okay, how much lower can we go than that? Well, you set that straight. You really collapsed hard. You really didn't do much of anything. I might should raise you up to failed expectations because you guys finished better than I remembered at 7-10, but ultimately we were expecting you guys to be around a 10, maybe 11 win team with your roster capability. Alright, moving on now to Denver, and let's just be real, they vastly exceeded expectations. We did not expect Bo Nix to lead a team to the playoffs in year 1. And hey, that happened. The Broncos finishing at 10-7. I was anticipating them to maybe be a 6-win team, 7-win team, maybe an 8-win team. Well, Bo Nix came in and proved that wrong. Led a team to the playoffs in year 1, and the future can be bright for Denver as long as they don't regress. That's the big hope after a season like this. Look at Houston. They kind of took a step back. They got back in the playoffs, but they did not look as convincing as last year. Denver, can you avoid that same trap? All right, moving on to Detroit. And you guys exceeded expectations a little bit. Ultimately, I was expecting you guys to be fighting for the top seed. I was not expecting you guys to be at 15-2. That was a huge mark. I had you guys probably about, I think it was like 12 wins, 13 wins, something like that. Y'all were a couple wins above that. And you managed to play up really well when your defense was battered. Yeah, it kind of bit you in the end when you were playing Washington, but you were able to make some pretty impressive plays and some pretty impressive games when you were battered up on the defensive side of the ball. Green Bay, y'all exceeded expectations for me a little bit as well. I anticipated you guys to be around, a 9, 10 win team. You got 11 wins, I expected you guys to be competitive. You got a little bit more competitive than I anticipated, and you really had a shot to be better, but you started collapsing down the stretch. So, future's bright for Green Bay as long as they can avoid those down the stretch collapses. Houston, I had to wrestle with you a little bit because I expected you guys to come out the gate guns a-blazing, picking up right where CJ Stroud left off. That was kind of my hope. That was kind of my, higher expectations for you guys. It didn't really happen, but you guys also managed to get around the record I expected you guys to get. So I think I'm going to throw you guys in the as advertised because you got to the record I anticipated you to get. Not the way I anticipated you to get it, but you got there. All right, now as for the Colts, I think we all expected Anthony Richardson to take a pretty solid jump in year number 2 when he had a full season. He didn't. He looked pretty bad. They failed expectations. Let's call a spade here. They don't have an answer at quarterback. They don't really have anything to build off of in there. Maybe you got Michael Pittman Jr. and Jonathan Taylor. You got maybe a decent defense, but if you don't got a quarterback and you don't got a lot of big standout players other than maybe a couple on either side of the ball, you're not really going to do much in the league. And that's just what Indianapolis experienced this year. And that's why they were an 8-9 team. I was hoping they'd be more of a 9-10 win team than that. Jacksonville, I was hoping last year was a down year for you. It wasn't. You failed my expectations. I anticipated you to be fighting for at least around 500, and you managed to go 4-13. Totally fighting for 500 there. Nice job. But at least you finally fired Trent Baalke, but then you ripped away an offensive coordinator from the Buccaneers in the most confusing way possible with the craziest 48 hours I've ever seen, and then your coach to come in on his first press conference and enter Duval in the stupidest way he could have done it. You managed to fail your way into this situation. Hopefully, you can get better from here, Jacksonville. Kansas City, you kind of exceeded my expectations. I was anticipating you guys to be around, a 13-win team, kind of like Detroit situation. I expect you to be kind of like the Lions. You went 15-2, and you're playing in the Super Bowl. Kind of hard to not say you exceeded expectations. I don't know why I want to keep saying exceeded expectations. But, hey, you exceeded my expectations by a little bit, Kansas City, but not by much. Let's be real. Who didn't expect this? All right, so the Chargers, it's kind of a hit or miss for me. I anticipated them to be right around where they were record-wise. But I anticipated them to do more damage in the playoffs than they did. I'm going to throw them in the as advertised here. I'm going to be a little bit more lenient with them. But it is with the caveat that I expected them to go a little bit further in the playoffs, maybe get one playoff win. I know Jim Harbaugh hasn't coached in the NFL in a long time, but he just won a national championship. And not saying that it translates 1-to-1 to the NFL, but you have experience in must-win games, and you didn't really do much with a decently talented roster there. You've had a pretty solid receiving core build up in Los Angeles this year. Ladd McConkey having a huge breakout season for you guys. The other LA team, we're going to throw you in the same place as advertised. I expected you guys to be around a 9-10 win team, just about fighting for a playoff spot, maybe the division. You did just that. You're almost like a Texan situation. You didn't do it the way I expected you to do it. I expected you guys to be kind of balanced on your wins throughout the year. Instead, you pulled a Super Bowl hangover again and collapsed at the beginning of the season. That's the thing. This team, ever since their Super Bowl victory in 2021, or 2022 actually, they have been a team to enter a season collapsing and then rise from the dead. They've done it for the last 2 seasons. They've been all but dead in the water by week 6, and then they managed to make the playoffs. I don't know what it is with this team, but now there's a lot of question marks going forward. But I expect them to be fighting for a playoff spot, and they were. Las Vegas, I was hoping for you guys to do a little bit more. I was anticipating you guys to be around, a 5-6 win team. You were a 4-13 team. Very close to expectations, but not quite where I was hoping. I was hoping Antonio Pierce would have made a decent jump in his first full year as a head coach, and he really didn't. He ended up getting himself fired. So, I don't know. I really don't know, man. Miami, you were as advertised. We anticipated you to be around a 500 team. We were hoping Tua would be a little bit more healthy. He wasn't. But ultimately, the team really did what I expected them from the beginning of the season. Moving on now, we got Minnesota. When J.J. McCarthy went down for the year, your expectations were about as low as they could be. And instead, you were fighting for a chance to be the top seed in the NFC. And you had 14-3. Yes, you lost that game to Detroit. But you really exceeded expectations. After J.J. McCarthy went down, I was like, this team's going to be a 6-win team. 5 or 6 win team. Just watch. But no, you guys went and basically flipped the script. You got the number of losses that I anticipated you to get as wins. New England, you were as advertised. I anticipated you guys to be kind of a bottom of the barrel franchise this year, but starting to put pieces together. And you did just that. You shown that you had promise in your 2 quarterbacks there. And, you know, you're really looking like a pretty decent team. You got Drake May, you got Joe Milton. Joe Milton looking really good in that Bills game. Yes, the Bills rested their starters, but still looking really good the way he did and the way he played in that last game. And Drake May having flashes all throughout the season. This team is going to have a bright future. Just you watch. New Orleans, we're going to throw you in the same boat as New England. We anticipated you to be right around where you were. Looking at your record, 5-12, I didn't expect Derek Carr to make that big of a jump for you guys. He was a bit more of a jump than I expected, but whenever he was off the field, you guys couldn't do much of anything. You know, I didn't expect you guys to be fighting for much of anything. Maybe the NFC South, depending on how, you know, the Buccaneers and the Falcons would play. You weren't, but that's mostly because the Buccaneers and Falcons played well. You did right what I expected you to do. All right, moving on to the Giants, and let's be real here. You have a 3-14 team that passed on Saquon Barkley because they don't need Saquon. Of course they're going to collapse versus expectations. You know, when you have a GM that was incompetent as he was, I mean, just look at the clips from Hard Knocks. It's hard to watch. It is hard to watch if you have any semblance of an NFL knowledge. And the fact that they said we don't need Saquon tells you that hey, they think they're a decent team, or they're not trying to rebuild, because you would have traded Saquon if you were trying to rebuild. And it just was a clown show over there. Collapsing versus expectations. I was expecting them, since their offseason moves, I was expecting them to be around a 7-8 win team fighting for around 500. Instead, no, they got like 3 wins. Jets, let's be real, you're going in the same place as well as your New York brethren. With Aaron Rodgers coming back for a full season, we were hoping that you guys would be a 10. I had you pegged as a 12-win team. I had you pegged as a 12-win team through my way too early predictions last year. And you got half of that. Less than half of that. So, yeah, you collapsed. Philadelphia, we're going to move you in the exceeded expectations category. Once again, you made the Super Bowl. Hard not for you to have an exceeded expectations season. Plus, I expect you to be around a 12-13 win team. You got 14. You didn't really do much since week 2 in terms of horrible losses. After your first couple games, you've been white hot. So, you know, Philadelphia, you exceeded my expectations for you. Pittsburgh, you were as advertised. Yes, there was some concern that people didn't have you as a 10-win team. I personally didn't. I had you as a 9-win team because Mike Tomlin gets his 500 season and then says, okay, we got our 500 season, now let's go to Cancun, and the players don't play out the rest of the season. Sometimes that comes in week 18 after they get their last win in the last week of the season. Sometimes that comes, like it did this year. After their 10th win, they kind of fell apart. So Pittsburgh, though, I expected them to make the playoffs at least and be around 500. They did that. They didn't do anything in the playoffs like I expected. This team they've been walking advertisement for themselves. All right, Seattle. I think you guys slightly exceeded my expectations. I was expecting you guys to be floating around right around 500. You got a little bit more than 500, 8 to 9 wins for 500. You were a 10-7 team. You were fighting for the NFC West. So ultimately, I think that you slightly exceeded my expectations, but you are the lowest of my exceeded expectations category because you didn't really exceed it by that much. You really showed that you had some decent promise there, especially under your first year head coach up there in Seattle, and really they looked decent. So they look pretty decent, pretty solid. So I'm looking forward to what Seattle has in the future. But I don't know if it's going to be under Geno. I think you got to go for a quarterback here pretty soon if you're Seattle, because Geno's been in the league for quite some time. He might not have much time left. San Francisco, where else can we put you? This is a horrible season. You want to forget that 2024 even happened. Let's just move on. Tampa Bay, I'm going to throw you in the slightly exceeded expectations category as well, alongside Seattle. I was expecting you guys to be around an 8-9 win team. You got 10. Same deal as Seattle. It's just you made the playoffs and Seattle didn't. Tennessee, what else did we expect? You were a team that played football. I mean, I didn't really have much of any expectations for you, so a 3-14 season doesn't put you as failed expectations. I didn't really see much out of you guys to do much of anything, and you didn't do anything, so there you go. And obviously, Washington collapsed versus expectations, right? I mean, they had a rookie quarterback and went 12-5. Oh, wait, no, yeah, they totally exceeded expectations. Oh, man, Washington, let's be real here. You did everything you needed to do. You did everything you needed to do, and you did it right. You played well. You played aggressive. Dan Quinn managing to beat the other Dan at his own game, Dan Campbell, by being aggressive on fourth downs like that against the Lions in Detroit and making it to the NFC Championship game in year one under Jaden Daniels. Absolutely incredible for this team. And Washington, I am really excited to see what you can do in the next couple of years. You're kind of in the same boat as Denver, just with more pressure, if I don't drop my pencil. You got more pressure than Denver, so to speak, because Denver, if they don't do much of anything next year, they can say, oh, well, at least last year we only made the wild card. You guys have to back up an NFC Championship appearance. Do I think you can do it? Yes, but it's going to be tougher than what Denver has to do. But I'm excited for what you guys can do next year. All right, so this is my official 2024 NFL season debriefing tier list. So, let me know in the comments down below who you would have moved in different categories. I want to hear what you guys have to say, and I'll respond to all yins that leave a comment. Also, want to apologize for the last week of inactivity. It has been a little bit crazy. I did have an assignment that was kind of beating me down Monday, Tuesday, and into Wednesday. And then, Wednesday, Thursday, I had all my long days, unfortunately. So I do want to apologize about that. But I am still here. I am still alive. I finally had time to actually sit down and make this video for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked, smash like and subscribe. It does help me out a whole lot. We're on the road to 75 subs. So, we could do that maybe by the Super Bowl. I know it's pretty lofty. It'd be pretty cool. If not, maybe by free agency. But anyway, I guess I'll catch you guys later. Peace out and have a good one.